Hello there, everybody, and going to give you another sort of addition to the geography updates videos for the BFI geography program. This one's following up from the one that was published last week, which was an update explainer on issues affecting maritime choke points, particularly the Red Sea. And again, I just want to sort of follow up on another aspect that's connected to this, and you can see on the screen there the key issues, key terms in theme 1 of the geography program that this might connect to. And when we look at this is taken from the previous video looking at how issues in the Red Sea, and the Houthi attacks on container shipping vessels, instability around the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, creating great instability in the global economy, maritime shipping routes, and the impact that this is having on the sort of not just trade routes but the global economy as well. And you can see that shipping companies are looking for alternatives. You can see how shipping has been diverted away from the Red Sea and the Suez Canal to the Cape of Good Hope in response to the problems that are encountered in that region. And this had big impact on the global economy as well. These are just a selection of headlines over the last few weeks of how this instability in the maritime trade routes through the Suez Canal have affected supply chains, and how this is starting to be felt as impacts on businesses in markets in Europe, in North America as well, and impacts on consumers ultimately, as well as the higher costs that are incurred through taking alternative trade routes that take a longer time, incur more expense in terms of fuel costs, and passed on to consumers. So when you got big multinational companies like IKEA and Next, clothing sort of company in the UK, commercial retailer, then it's likely to have an inflationary impact, and it just illustrates the importance of maritimisation in the global economy. When you see that sort of disruption in one part of the chain is having such significant consequences. And 7 out of the 10 the world's 10 largest shipping companies have suspended their transit through the Red Sea, and it's not just the problems in the Red Sea that are creating these issues as well. Earlier in the year, back in September 2023, this academic year, did a geography update explainer video looking at the Panama Canal and the issues that were starting to affect volumes of trade going through the Panama Canal, another choke point in maritime trade that connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Did that explainer back in September, and even since November 2023 through to January 2024, where we are now and I'm recording this, there's been a 30% decline in the volume of trade passing through the Panama Canal just over the course of those few months. So there are, and as a result of the difficulties in these routes, you can see the knock-on consequences in the costs for shipping goods around the world as well. So the cost of sending a 40-foot container from China to Northern Europe has risen by 283% since December 2023. So as a result of these challenges in global trade and the passage of vessels through different maritime trade routes, and the costs that are incurred, companies are looking for alternatives to those established routes, and there are potentially alternative routes elsewhere in the world that could cut up to could journey times enormously, 40% off the length of journeys made via the Suez Canal, and those routes are located in the Arctic. And this is why the previous explainer video then connects into another theme 1 issue, and the Arctic as a potential maritime trade route, and an alternative, and could affect trade patterns. Now, the question, is it a viable option? You can see that there are 3 possible trade routes of varying viability in the Arctic. You've got the Northern Sea Route, passes along sort of the coast, the northern coastline of Russia and then Scandinavia. You've got the Northwest Passage. Passes sort of through sort of islands along the coastlines of the USA and Canada, and then you've got the Transpolar Sea Route that runs right through the middle of the Arctic there as well. So you've got these three routes, and how viable are they as alternatives? And they're certainly being looked at increasingly by maritime trade companies, container ship companies, particularly given, as we sort of explained, the disruption in those traditional routes that are being experienced, whether that's through climate in the Panama Canal and reduced water levels, or whether that's through geopolitical tensions in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and the Suez Canal. So is the Arctic a viable option for global shipping? Well, historically, the major problem with navigating these routes has been the climate conditions that you face there, and that much of the sea is icebound for large proportions of the year. However, one of the sort of consequences of global warming and the acceleration of global warming, and the fact that the Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the global average, and that since 1978 the ice coverage in the Arctic has shrunk by roughly 78,000 square kilometers a year. Now, just to put that into context, that's the same as sort of 31% of the landmass of Great Britain every year. Sort of an enormous scale that's sort of changing the situation in the Arctic. And a study in June 2023 suggested that by the 2040s, the Arctic could be experiencing its first ice-free summers, which again would make the routes through the Arctic increasingly viable for maritime trade. And another aspect that is increasing that viability is the way in which technology is developing. It requires a lot of specialist technology to navigate through these icy waters and challenging routes. And technology in terms of helping navigate the routes, the technology involved in the ships is increasing and improving all the time, particularly as countries are invested in increasing the viability of these options as well. And so that combination of the warming of the Arctic, the technological change, is suggesting that it does become more viable for global shipping. And the evidence also suggests that trade volumes through the Arctic routes are already increasing as well. If we take the Northern Sea Route, trade volume has increased by 755% between 2014 and 2022. And Russia, who controls the vast majority of that Northern Sea Route in terms of passing through its sort of territorial waters, has ambitions to increase these trade volumes by tenfold by 2035. Again, there's a potential link here to theme 2 of geography as well, and integration strategies and ways in which Russia could be looking to sort of promote its level of integration into the global economy and use the Northern Sea Route as a potential development and integration strategy. So with that in mind, in October 2022, Russia signed an agreement with DP World, which is an Emirati logistics company, to develop Arctic container shipping. And also in October 2022, the New Shipping Line, which is a Chinese shipping company, completed its first round trip on the Arctic route, a voyage between Shanghai and St. Petersburg. And so, yes, it's becoming more viable. The statistics suggest that these routes are being used more frequently. However, even though the statistics suggest that trade volumes are increasing enormously through these regions, the Arctic routes still are very much a sort of minor aspect of maritime trade compared to the more established routes. So in 2022, fewer than 1,700 ships navigated their way through the Arctic, and you compare that to other routes, over 23,000 ships passed through the Suez Canal and over 14,000 ships passing through the Panama Canal. And on the other side of the argument as well, that suggests that the Arctic isn't yet a truly viable option for global shipping. There are many other constraints that these routes face. It's still highly seasonal. Most Arctic voyages have been made in the summer. The Northwestern Passage, much more icebound than the Northern Sea Route. And when you take the Transpolar Sea Route, that's only navigable using the heavy icebreakers and the enormous costs involved in that process as well. So it's still highly seasonal, partly connected to that. Is incredibly expensive. So even if journey times could potentially be reduced by using Arctic routes compared to other maritime trade routes, the cost increase of these routes in other aspects makes it less viable. Insurance costs are very high for ships navigating their way through these waters or looking to charter ships through these waters. That's because of the physical challenges, the poor mapping of the region in terms of understanding the channels that vessels can navigate their way through, considering the sort of draft of each vessel as well as the depth of the waters. You've got extreme and unpredictable weather. So given those aspects, it's likely that you would find that there would be more accidents for vessels travelling through those waters. And if there's likely to be more accidents, then insurance companies are going to charge higher premiums, so they can sort of negate any cost advantages that could be there through a shorter journey. Because of the higher expenses. Also, it's questionable whether it does save time passing through these routes. A 2023 study found that delays due to sea fog accounted for around about 25% of the sailing time along the Northwestern Passage, 4 to 11% along the Northern Sea Route. So again, the weather conditions can take away any time advantages that might be physically a shorter distance, but it actually still takes a long time because of the other conditions that the vessels face going through those routes. And it requires specialist ships and expertise, to be a highly skilled and experienced navigator to pilot your vessels through these waters. So that costs a lot of money as well. Another issue that limits the viability of Arctic routes as an option for global shipping are the geopolitical tensions that exist here. We know that they have been an issue in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait recently and the Suez Canal, but they exist in these routes too. If ships want to pass and sail along the Northern Sea Route, they need to get Russian permission to do that. So as a result, these routes are not used by Western vessels, and that brings in other aspects of Theme 1 again when we think about maritime zones, territorial waters, EEZs. They are an issue within the geopolitical tensions in this region. With the Northwestern Passage, there are disagreements between Canada and the US, transit rules and, whose waters they're passing through. The Transpolar Sea Route, because of its geographical location, would pass through international waters. So potentially, if that does become a viable route, geopolitical tensions you would expect wouldn't be as considerable as they are for the other two routes in the Arctic. So potentially that could diminish geopolitical tensions as a factor limiting the viability of Arctic routes in the future. And the other sort of big obstacle, the obvious environmental concerns of increasing container shipping through these routes. In 2021, the International Maritime Organization, a UN agency, adopted a ban on heavy fuel oil usage in the Arctic, which comes into force in 2029, in the hope that this will reduce the risk of oil spills and pollution in those waters. Also, the associated air, water and noise pollution that comes along with greater shipping volumes through this region threaten native species and the locals who rely on them in terms of the kind of economies and the structure of the economies in these Arctic regions as well. So currently, despite the amount of trade passing through these regions increasing over the last few years, and given the sort of instability that exists in other maritime trade routes right now, the Arctic could increasingly become a more viable option for global shipping, but the constraints that exist there are still very significant. Okay, thank you.